In 1998, a park ranger in Yosemite found a child's shoe placed perfectly on a rock 4 miles from where the boy vanished. The shoe wasn't dirty. It wasn't worn, it was placed. When they asked the ranger what he thought happened, he resigned the next day and never spoke about it again. Until now. What you're about to hear has been buried in incident reports, dismissed as coincidence, and redacted from public record, but the patterns are undeniable. The silence is deafening. And after decades of missing persons cases that defy logic, physics, and human capability, rangers across North America are finally breaking their code of silence. They call it the missing 411. The government calls it nothing at all, because officially, these people were never taken. They simply disappeared. And what's coming back in their place isn't always them. This isn't folklore. This isn't conspiracy. This is testimony from the men and women who walk those trails every single day, who've seen the evidence rooms, who've carried the body bags, and who've been told in no uncertain terms to keep their mouths shut. Because if the public knew what was really happening in our national parks, no one would ever go hiking again. And the truth is so much worse than you think. There's a reason the Park Service doesn't keep a centralized list of the missing. There's a reason search and rescue teams are sometimes told to stop looking after just 48 hours. And there's a reason that in over 100 cases, people have been found miles away, without shoes, without memories, and without any explanation that fits inside the realm of the rationale. You think you know the wilderness? You think it's just trees and trails and fresh air? But the rangers know something different. They know about the clusters, the profile points, the disappearances that happen in areas so remote, so specific, that the odds of it being random are statistically impossible. And they know that when someone vanishes near granite, near water, near berry bushes in the late afternoon, they usually don't come back. And if they do, they're not the same. His name was Martin. He was 6 years old. June 14th, 1969. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. He was playing hide-and-seek with his brother and some other kids, just 30 meters from his family. They heard him laughing. Then they heard nothing. They searched for 9 days. They brought in the FBI, the Green Berets, the National Guard. Over 1,400 people combed that mountain. Helicopters, bloodhounds, psychics. They found nothing. Not a single trace. Not a footprint. Not a piece of clothing. Not a scent trail. It was as if Dennis Martin had been plucked from the earth by an invisible hand. His father spent the rest of his life searching. He died without answers. But Dennis wasn't the first, and he sure as hell wasn't the last. 60 years later, the cases keep piling up, and if you lay them out on a map, you don't see randomness. You see clusters, hotspots, places where people vanish with such frequency that it stops being coincidence and starts being something else. Yosemite, Crater, Lake, the Great Smoky Mountains, Glacier National Park. These aren't just beautiful places, they're hunting grounds. And the thing doing the hunting doesn't leave evidence. It doesn't leave tracks. It doesn't follow the rules of predator and prey that we understand, because sometimes the missing are found. And when they are, the details are worse than if they'd just stayed gone. They're found in areas already searched multiple times by trained professionals. They're found without shoes, even though the terrain would shred bare feet to pulp within minutes. They're found at elevations or distances impossible for their age or physical condition to reach. Toddlers found 10 miles away. Elderly people found at the top of mountains they couldn't have climbed. And when they're found alive and you ask them what happened, they don't remember. Or they say things that don't make sense. Things about lights, about voices, about someone calling their name, about feeling like they were floating or being carried, or that time just stopped. The people who do remember refuse to go into detail. They just say it wasn't human, and they never go back into the woods. David Paulides, a former police officer, started documenting these cases in 2012. He called it Missing 411. And what he found wasn't just disturbing. It was a profile, a Checklist. Signature. People vanishing near bodies of water. People vanishing near boulder fields or granite clusters. People vanishing in the late afternoon. People with disabilities or high intelligence. People found with missing clothing. People whose shoes are later discovered miles away. Neathlete. Plus aid. These aren't isolated incidents. They're patterned. Methodical. And the Park Service refuses to release the full list of missing persons. Let's talk about the shoes, because this is where it stops being strange and starts being impossible. In over 40 cases, shoes have been found miles away from the body or the last known location. And they're not torn. They're not damaged. They're placed deliberately. On rocks, on trails, in places where they can be seen. It's like a calling card. A signature. And it happens so often that search and rescue teams now have a protocol for it. They call it the shoe anomaly. And no one can explain it. Keith Parkins, 2 years old. Ritter, Oregon, 1952. Vanished from his family's property. They found his body 19 hours later, over 12 miles away, at the top of a mountain. The terrain was so rough that grown men struggled to reach him. His feet were bare. His shoes were found a week later, miles apart from each other, in 2 separate locations. They were clean. The laces were still tied. How does a 2-year-old cover 12 miles of wilderness, scale a mountain, and lose his shoes in 2 completely different directions without getting a scratch on him? He couldn't. It's not possible. Jarrett Atavero, 3 years old. Colorado, 1999. Vanished on a trail his family was hiking. Search teams found nothing for 4 years. Then in 2003, a hiker stumbled on his clothes. They were 1,500 feet up a mountain, folded in a pile. His shoes were on top, placed side by side. The area had been searched dozens of times. There's no way anyone could have missed that, unless it wasn't there before. The clothing showed no sign of animal predation. No tears. No blood. It was as if someone had carefully undressed him, folded his things, and left them on display. And this happens again and again. Shoes removed, bodies moved. Clothing missing or arranged. The Park Service says it's exposure. They say people in hypothermia sometimes remove their clothes, a phenomenon called paradoxical undressing. But that doesn't explain toddlers. That doesn't explain shoes placed miles away. That doesn't explain how someone can vanish in seconds and reappear days later in a location already searched, unless something is moving them, unless something is taking them. And unless that something wants us to know, rangers won't talk about it on record. But off the record, they'll tell you they found shoes they didn't log. Shoes that appeared days into a search in places the dogs had already cleared. Shoes that had no scent, no trail. One ranger in Crater Lake said he found a pair of children's sneakers on a trail marker 7 miles from where a boy had vanished. He radioed it in. When the team arrived an hour later, the shoes were gone. He was told to stop looking. He was told it was a false sighting. But he knows what he saw, and he's not the only one. Here's something the Park Service will never tell you. There's a geological pattern. Almost every missing 411 case happens near large granite formations or boulder fields. Yosemite is granite. The Rockies are granite. Crater Lake sits on a volcanic granite base, and the clusters, the hotspots where people vanish most frequently, they all share this one commonality. It's not trees. It's not wildlife. It's the stone. And researchers have started asking a question that sounds insane until you see the data. What if granite is a conductor? What if something is using it? There are old indigenous stories about the stone people, about places in the mountains where you don't go because the rocks are awake. The Paiute called them the rock giants. The Navajo speak of places where the earth has memory, where it pulls people under. And these aren't campfire tales. These are warnings passed down for thousands of years. The elders would mark certain areas as forbidden. Not because of animals, not because of terrain, because of what lives in the stone. and modern disappearances line up almost perfectly with these ancient no-go zones. Geology tells us that granite contains quartz, and quartz is pyrolytic. That means it generates an electrical charge when compressed. Some researchers believe that tectonic pressure, underground water, flow, or even human presence could activate a low-frequency electromagnetic pulse in these areas, and there are documented cases of people experiencing disorientation, missing time, auditory hallucinations, and memory loss in regions with high granite density. The military has studied this. It's called the Hutchison effect. But the government doesn't want you connecting those dots. Because if they admit that certain geographic locations can alter consciousness or create spatial anomalies, they'd have to close half the national parks in the country. One case that perfectly illustrates this is the vanishing of Stacy and Aris. She was 14. July 17th, 1981. Yosemite National Park. She went on a short walk with her father and some friends to take photos near Sunrise High Sierra Camp. Her father was 20 feet behind her. He looked down to tie his shoe. When he looked up, she was gone. They searched for weeks. They found a lens cap and her camera, both next to a creek surrounded by granite boulders. The lens cap was placed on a rock, not dropped. Placed. The camera had no photos on it. And Stacy was never found. The area she vanished from is one of the highest concentrations of granite in the park. And she's not the only one. Over a dozen people have disappeared in that exact area. Same terrain, same stone, same silence. Rangers are told it's dangerous terrain. They're told people fall. They're told people get lost. But they're not told why entire search grids come back empty, only for the missing person to be found days later in the center of an area that was searched first. They're not told why the dogs lose the scent at the granite. And they're not told why some areas of the park give them a feeling they couldn't explain. A heaviness, a hum, a wrongness that makes them want to leave even when the sun is still up. Not everyone who vanishes stays gone. Some come back, and that's when things get truly horrifying, because the people who return aren't always the same. They don't remember what happened, or they remember too much, and what they describe doesn't fit into any known framework of reality. They talk about losing time, about being in two places at once, about seeing themselves from above, about hearing their name called in a voice that sounded like their mother, their brother, their friend, but wrong, distorted, wet. And when they followed that voice, the forest changed. Albert Snyder, 1950s. Montana. He was found after 2 days missing, sitting on a log. Calm as could be. When they asked where he'd been, he said he didn't know. He said he remembered walking, and then the trees started moving, and then he was somewhere else. He said he saw lights in the ground, lights that looked like eyes, and he said something was walking behind him the whole time, but every time he turned around, there was nothing there, just the feeling of breath on his neck. He refused to go back into the woods for the rest of his life, or take the case of Keith Reinhardt, experienced outdoorsman. Disappeared in 1988 near Silver Plume, Colorado. They found him weeks later, delirious and dehydrated, miles from where he vanished. He kept repeating the same phrase. They tried to take me under the mountain. They tried to show me the door. He couldn't explain what that meant. He died shortly after from complications related to exposure. But before he did, he told a nurse that the thing he saw wasn't an animal. It walked on 2 legs. It wore the forest like a coat, and it smiled at him. Then there are the children, the ones found miles away, unharmed, but silent. They don't cry. They don't speak. They just stare. One case involved a 3-year-old boy found 20 miles from his home, sitting in a field, completely dry despite 2 days of rain. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't drunk water, but he wasn't hungry. When his mother hugged him, he didn't react. It took him 3 weeks to speak again, and when he finally did, he said, "The bear man carried me." He said I had to be quiet. He said if I cried, they'd hear me. When asked who they were, the boy went silent again. He's 19 now. He still won't talk about it. Search and rescue teams have a term for these cases. Take call, Tim retrieved. Not found, retrieved. because it feels less like a rescue and more like someone gave them back. One ranger said it plainly. It's like they were borrowed, and then returned when whoever took them was done. And the look in their eyes when you find them, it's not relief. It's confusion. Like they're surprised to be back, like they didn't think they would be. And some of them, late at night, when no one's listening, will tell you they didn't want to come back. They'll tell you it was beautiful where they were, that it was warm, that someone was singing, and that the worst part wasn't being taken. It was being brought back to a world that suddenly felt wrong. Let's be very clear about something. The National Park Service knows. They've always known, and they've made a deliberate choice not to tell you. There is no centralized database for missing persons in national parks. None. You can pull up records for missing persons in every major city in America. But if someone vanishes in Yosemite or Yellowstone, there's no unified tracker. No searchable log. No public record. And when investigators like David Paulides filed Freedom of Information Act requests to get the data, the Park Service said it would cost over $1.4 million to compile. For a list they should already have. Why? Why would they not track this? Why would they not want to know how many people have gone missing in their jurisdiction? The answer is simple. Because if they released that number, if they showed the clusters, the patterns, the timelines, people would stop coming. Tourism would collapse, and national parks generate billions of dollars a year. So instead, they bury it. They dismiss it. They say people get lost. They say it's the terrain. They say it's animal attacks. Even when there's no evidence of animal attacks. Even when the body is found intact, clean, and miles from where it should be. And the rangers are told to stay quiet. They're told not to speculate. They're told to stick to the narrative, but some of them can't anymore. One anonymous ranger from Sequoia National Park came forward in 2019 and said, "We all know there are areas we don't go. There are trails we avoid after 4 p.m. There are sections of the park we won't enter alone, and we're told that's just protocol. But it's not. It's because people vanish there, and we don't know why. And our supervisors don't want us talking about it because it scares people. But you know what's scarier, letting people hike into those areas without warning them. There are incident reports that never see daylight, reports of strange sounds, of lights in the woods, of organized search grids that come back wrong, where the terrain has changed, where landmarks have moved, where compasses spin. There are reports of cadaver dogs refusing to enter certain areas, of helicopters picking up heat signatures that vanish mid-flight, of radios that stop working in specific zones, and all of it gets stamped inconclusive or unexplained and filed away. Because if they acknowledged it, they'd have to do something about it. And the truth is, they don't know what to do. One retired ranger, speaking under condition of anonymity, said this: "I was part of a search in 2005. We found a woman, alive, 30 miles from where she disappeared. She'd been gone for 6 days. She wasn't dehydrated. She wasn't starving, and she had no memory of how she got there. When we asked her what she remembered, she looked at me and said, 'I wasn't walking. I was floating, and the trees were upside down.' We wrote in the report that she was disoriented from trauma. But that's not what happened. She was lucid, she was calm, and she was telling the truth. We just didn't want to write it down." One of the most disturbing patterns in missing 411 cases is this. Right before someone vanishes, they hear their name. Not shouted, not screamed, whispered, or called softly, like a friend or family member is just out of sight, and the voice is always familiar. It's always someone they trust. But when they follow it, that person isn't there, and by the time they realize it, they're lost. They're turned around, and the forest doesn't look the same anymore. Ella McKinney, 10 years old, 1981. Montana. She was hiking with her family. She told her mom she heard her dad calling her from up the trail. Her mom said, "Your dad is right here." But Ella insisted. She said, "No, I hear him. He's calling me." She walked 20 feet ahead, and then she was gone. They never found her. Her father said he never called her name. He was standing next to his wife the entire time. So whose voice did Ella hear? This happens over and over. Adults report it too. In 2015, a solo hiker in Glacier National Park reported hearing his wife's voice calling for help. He ran toward it, shouting her name, only to realize she was back home in Texas. He tried to retrace his steps. He couldn't. It took search and rescue 2 days to find him. He said the voice led him in circles, deeper and deeper into the woods, and every time he got close, it moved. He said it started to sound less like his wife and more like something mimicking her. The cadence was off. The tone was wet, distorted, and then he heard it laughing. Indigenous tribes have spoken about this for centuries. The Wendigo, the mimic. Different names. Samebe, something in the forest that learns your voice, learns your face, and uses it to lure people away. The Abenaki people called them the Nalasafelia, shadow spirits that walk between the trees and call your name in the voice of the dead. The Cree elders taught their children that if you hear your name in the woods and no one is there, you run. You don't answer. You don't look. You run, because if you acknowledge it, it knows you can hear it, and then it follows you home. Modern science tries to explain it away. Auditory pareidolia, the brain making patterns out of wind and rustling leaves. But that doesn't explain why it's always a name, always a voice, always familiar. And it doesn't explain why the people who follow it are never seen again, or why those who survive say the same thing. That the voice got closer, that it came from everywhere at once. That when they finally stopped and turned around, they felt breath on the back of their neck. And when they spun to face it, there was nothing. Just trees. Just silence, and the horrible, creeping realization that they weren't alone. They never were. If you map every missing 411 case, something terrifying emerges. They're not random, they form clusters. Hotspots. Zones where the disappearances happen with such frequency that coincidence is no longer a possibility. These are places where the veil is thin, where the rules don't apply, and where people vanish without a trace, over and over and over again. Yosemite has over 40 cases. The Great Smoky Mountains have over 30. Crater Lake, Mount Shasta, Glacier National Park. These aren't just beautiful destinations. They're hunting grounds. Yosemite is the worst. In the same 10-mile radius, people have been vanishing for over 60 years. Stacy and Arus, George Penka, Joel Tamazine, all gone. All from the same area. All with the same bizarre details. No scent trails. No evidence. Bodies found miles away in places already searched. And the Park Service says nothing. They don't warn hikers. They don't put up signs. They just let people walk in, unaware that they're entering one of the most dangerous places in North America. Not because of bears. Not because of cliffs. But because of something else. Something that doesn't show up on maps. Mount Shasta is another hotspot. Considered sacred by the Wintu and Modoc tribes, the mountain has legends going back thousands of years. Legends of people who go up and don't come down. Of doors in the mountain. Of lights and sounds that don't belong. And the modern cases reflect this. People vanish on clear days, on well-marked trails, often within sight of others. In one case, a man disappeared in the middle of a group hike. They were walking single file. He was third in line. The person behind him looked down for 5 seconds. When he looked up, the man was gone. They searched immediately. They found nothing. Not a footprint off the trail. Not a broken branch. It was as if he'd been plucked into the air. Crater Lake is another cursed zone. The Klamath people have a name for it. The place where the dead walk. They say the lake is a doorway, a wound in the world, and that things come through it. Modern disappearances support this. Over a dozen people have vanished near the lake, often near the water's edge or along the rim. Charles McCullough, Dale Stelling, Thelma, Pauline Melton. All gone, and the few who've been found alive speak of disorientation, missing time, and a feeling that the lake was watching them. One survivor said, I swear, I saw something under the water. Not a fish. Not a log. Something big, and it surfaced for just a second, and I felt like it saw me. And that's when I knew I had to leave. Rangers stationed in these areas don't last long. They transfer out. They request reassignment, and when you ask them why, off the record, they'll tell you. You feel it. After a while, you feel it. The woods are different there. They're heavier. You don't want to be there after dark, and you start seeing things. Shadows that move wrong, lights that blink in patterns, and you realize, real quick, that you're not at the top of the food chain anymore. Most people who go missing in national parks never come back, but the ones who do, they're different. They're quiet, withdrawn, and when you ask them what happened, they give you pieces. Never the whole story, because the whole story is too much, and some part of them knows that if they say it out loud, it might come back for them. But in private moments, in therapy sessions, in interviews years later, the survivors speak, and what they say is consistent. Terrifyingly consistent. They talk about time acting strange. Hours that felt like minutes. Days that felt like seconds. One woman, found after 3 days missing, said it felt like she'd only been gone for 20 minutes. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't thirsty. Her watch had stopped. And when they told her how long she'd been missing, she didn't believe them. Another survivor said he lived an entire year in the forest, that he built a shelter, foraged for food, survived seasons. But he'd only been gone for 4 days. He couldn't explain it. He just knew it felt real. They talk about things in the trees. Not animals, not people, but something watching, observing, waiting. One man said he saw a figure standing between 2 pines. Tall. Too tall. Humanoid, but wrong. No face. Just a shape, and it didn't move. It just stood there, watching him. He ran. He ran until he collapsed, and when he woke up, he was on a trail he didn't recognize, miles from where he'd been. He said he could still feel it watching him. Even now, even years later, they talk about doorways, openings, places in the forest that look like they shouldn't be there. One woman described walking past a section of trees that felt like a curtain. She said she had the overwhelming urge to push through it, and just before she did, her dog started barking and pulled her back. When she turned around to look again, it was gone. Just trees. Just forest. But she swears it was there, a seam in the world, and she believes if she'd walked through it, she wouldn't have come back. And they talk about being told to forget. Not be people, but by a feeling, a voice inside their head that wasn't theirs. A pressure that said, don't remember, don't speak, don't tell. And most of them obey, because the fear isn't just what happened. It's what might happen if they talk. One survivor said it plainly. I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like if I say too much, it'll know. And it'll come back, and next time it won't let me go. And she's not alone. Dozens of survivors report the same thing, the same warning, the same dread, the same silence. So what is it? What's taking people? Is it human trafficking? No. The locations are too remote, the bodies too clean, the patterns too strange. Is it animal attacks? No. There's no predation, no blood, no territorial logic. Is it foul play? Sometimes, but not in the cases that fit the profile. So what's left? What explanation fits the data? The answer is one that most people can't accept, because it means the world isn't what we thought. It means the wilderness isn't empty, and it means we're not alone. Some researchers believe that certain places, certain geologic formations, act as thin spots where a reality overlaps with another, and that things from that other place can reach through, can pull. can take the granite, the water, the electromagnetic fields. They all play a role, and the disappearances aren't random. They're calculated, methodical. There's intelligence behind it. Not human, but not mindless either. It chooses, it hunts, and it's been doing this for a very, very long time. Others believe it's something older, something that was here long before we were. The indigenous peoples knew. They mapped Italiano, they marked Italiano. They told stories to keep people away. But we didn't listen. We built parks, we built trails, we invited millions of people into places we were warned to avoid. And now, every year, hundreds of people walk into those places and never come back. And the patterns continue, the clusters grow, and the Park Service stays silent. There's another theory, one that's harder to swallow, that we're being studied, observed, sampled, that the disappearances are a kind of harvest, that the ones who come back are the ones that didn't fit the criteria, the ones that were released, and the ones who'd never return. They're still there, somewhere, in a place we can't see, can't reach. And maybe that's why the shoes are left behind. Maybe that's why the clothing is folded. Maybe it's a message, a reminder that they were real, that they were here, and that something took them. The Rangers know more than they say. The government knows more than it admits. And the survivors know more than they can bear to speak. But the truth is coming out. Slowly. In whispers, in leaked reports, in testimonies that can't be ignored. The missing 411 files are real. The patterns are undeniable. And the silence is breaking. Because people deserve to know. They deserve to know that when they walk into the wild, they're not just walking into nature. They're walking into something else. Something ancient. Something aware. And something that's been waiting. If you're planning to visit a national park, do your research. Know the clusters. Avoid the hotspots. Don't hike alone. Don't wander off trail. And if you hear your name, if you hear a voice that sounds like someone you know, don't follow it. Don't answer. And whatever you do, don't look back. Because once it knows you can hear it, it won't stop. It'll follow you. And one day, when you least expect it, it'll call again. And this time, you might not be strong enough to ignore it. Stay safe. The woods are older than we are, and they remember everything.